Hi everyone, welcome back for another character analysis video. This time we'll be taking a look at Gabriel Utterson, Dr. Jekyll's friend and lawyer in Robert Louis Stevenson's novella The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Don't forget to check out the other videos in this series for more insight into the characters, themes, and plot of this story. At first glance, Mr. Utterson might seem like quite an unusual main character, with none of the mystery of Hyde or the dramatic flair of Jekyll. In fact, when we are first introduced to him, Stevenson goes out of his way to tell us how ordinary and straightforward he is. He is described as a man of a rugged countenance that was never lighted by a smile, lean, long, dusty, dreary, and yet somehow lovable. He abides strictly by the rules of society, and is able to restrain himself from doing things he likes in order to live a modest and upright life. For instance, though he enjoyed the theatre, had not crossed the doors of one for 20 years. Clearly he is someone that approaches life with a stern sense of duty and propriety, and really represents the perfect ideal of a Victorian gentleman. However, for all his seriousness, we soon discover that Utterson is the kind of friend you'd want in your corner if you were going through a hard time. He is deeply loyal, discreet, reliable, and morally grounded. As a lawyer, he encounters many people who are not like him, people who are more willing to indulge their dark sides. But unlike many other Victorian gentlemen, Utterson is not one to judge, and is inclined to help rather than to reprove. This leads to him often being the last reputable acquaintance and the last good influence in the lives of downgoing men. Quite a rare thing, as many people in this era, and even now, are quick to jump ship when someone is involved in a scandal or going through hard times. This is also a bit of foreshadowing by the author, as Utterson is set to be the last friend in Jekyll's life when everything spins out of control. Even though Utterson is fiercely loyal, it is not blind loyalty. He speaks his mind to Jekyll and other characters in this book, even if it has the potential to ruin his friendships. When Sir Danvers is murdered, for instance, he has the courage to go to Jekyll and ask him point blank, "You have not been mad enough to hide this fellow." His curiosity to uncover his friend's secrets is driven by a concern that is both personal and moral, and he uses logic and rationality, much like a detective would for a case, even when faced with things that are totally inexplicable. Because he is portrayed as such an upright, rational person, we can see that actually, despite his apparent plain personality, he is the perfect character to follow throughout this tale. He serves as a reliable anchor in the midst of all the chaos that Jekyll and Hyde create, and provides a moral lens through which we can see the shortcomings of the other characters more clearly. Utterson also has a central position in Jekyll's social circle, meaning that he is connected to each character and is able to get information from all of them to unravel the mystery of Hyde. This links to the theme of friendships within this novella, as the only relationships portrayed are the friendships between unmarried men. Right from the beginning, it is established that he is someone that people like to be around, as Stevenson writes, "Hosts love to detain the dry lawyer, sobering their minds in the man's rich silence after the expense and strain of gaiety." What this means is that people like him not because he is the life of the party, but because he is someone that you can sit with in silence and not feel uncomfortable. Because of this characteristic, Utterson is set up as the mutual friend for every character in the book, and it is through his friend and relative Mr. Enfield that he first gets wind of Hyde and his evil doings. It is also revealed that he has a connection with Dr. Lanyon, someone who will eventually provide some crucial missing pieces to this tale, and this is important because at the beginning of the book it is revealed that he had a falling out with Jekyll over a scientific matter. Without Utterson then, there would be no connection between the two men. And of course he has a very good relationship with Jekyll himself, as Stevenson writes that he cherished for Mr. Utterson a sincere and warm affection. Clearly he trusts him as well, since he also acts as his lawyer, so it is immediately odd to both the reader and to Utterson that Jekyll is so reluctant to talk about Hyde and becomes almost cross with him for even bringing it up. Of course, Utterson in no way suspects what the real truth of this situation is, and instead has a suspicion that he is being blackmailed for the ghost of some old sin, the cancer of some concealed disgrace. In fact, he maintains this view that there must be some logical explanation for all the strange happenings, right up until the very end, until the truth is revealed from Jekyll's letter. In some way, It seems that Utterson almost doesn't want to believe that Hyde could be a part of Jekyll, even though everything seems to point in that direction, both because it means that his friend has a monstrous side to him that is capable of murder, and because it upsets his rational view of life. Although he has known Jekyll for many years, he does not recognize any part of him in Mr. Hyde, and immediately takes a dislike to him, feeling disgust, loathing, and fear, not only from his physical appearance, but also because of the pure evil that seeps out of him. From the very first mention of his name from Mr. Enfield, Hyde takes over Utterson's imagination, causing him to have nightmarish dreams about him trampling children on every street corner in London, even before he ever sees his face. He represents the opposite of everything Utterson stands for, which perhaps is why he becomes obsessed with uncovering the mystery of who he is and what he has over his friend. Utterson's interactions with Hyde are the only time that he allows himself to stray a bit from his morally upright path. He actively seeks out Mr. Hyde and inserts himself in the situation, despite the probability that he is connected to Jekyll in some way that he does not want made public. However, his loyalty and friendship still outweigh his curiosity, as when Jekyll tells him, "This is a private matter and I beg of you to let it sleep." He does so for a whole year, until the murder of Sir Danvers Carew. He even honours Dr. Lanyon's request to not open the letter containing the answer to the mystery that he has been desperate to uncover, due to his professional honour and faith to his dead friend. He is clearly well practiced in the Victorian art of restraint, and stops himself from doing what many of us would have in his shoes. But again, that's what makes his perspective so great for the narration, as he keeps us in suspense right up until the last moment. Like I mentioned earlier, we could also argue that maybe deep down Utterson doesn't want to connect the final dots, partially out of fear that it would irreparably damage Jekyll's reputation. He knows he is involved somehow, but even his worst fears are nowhere near the actual truth. Right until the very end, he tries to keep Jekyll's reputation intact, even when faced with things that are totally inexplicable. When Jekyll's butler Poole comes to him in a frenzy, asking him to come to Jekyll's house out of fear that his master has been murdered, Utterson finds the other servants in an understandable state of distress due to the unusual and potentially horrifying situation. However, his first reaction is that of anger, saying peevishly, "Very irregular, very unseemly. Your master would be far from pleased." He is still concerned about preserving Jekyll's social image, and tries to find a rational explanation for all the strange occurrences. "Your master, Poole, is plainly seized with one of those maladies that both torture and deform the sufferer. There is my explanation. It is plain and natural." Upon hearing Mr. Hyde's voice in the laboratory, however, Poole and Utterson break down the door and find Mr. Hyde dead on the floor, wearing Jekyll-sized clothes. Faced with this extraordinary situation, Utterson still manages to think about Jekyll's reputation, saying to Poole, "If your master has fled or is dead, we may at least save his credit." This shows just how important respectability and reputation were in Victorian society, as Utterson knows that just one misstep could result in a scandal that would be impossible to come back from. So, to recap what we've learned about Utterson, he is above all a respectable and well-respected model of a Victorian gentleman. He practices restraint, maintains his social presence, and is pretty straightforward in every way. What sets him apart, however, is his extraordinary capacity for loyalty and the strong friendships that he has with the characters in the story. This makes him the ideal lens through which we view the plot, as his curiosity and friendship with Jekyll is what pushes him to unravel the mystery of Hyde, but his professionalism and restraint stops him from revealing too much to us too soon. His rational view of life also hinders him from solving the case earlier than he should, as he is placed in many situations which are totally irrational. However, his composed and level-headed approach to life provides much-needed balance to Jekyll and Hyde's chaos, and his moral way of living highlights the flaws of the other characters. Although he is a pretty plain and unassuming character at first glance, his particular set of traits actually make him the perfect person to guide us through the spooky tale. Thanks for watching, guys! Stay tuned for follow-up analysis videos soon to come. See you next time!